All right, good to go.
Since we're waiting here, I
Yep.
met the CEO of TransLink, and they're willing to come over and
You
provide some
realize
information to council.
everybody in the room, all the public are here and listening.
Okay, I didn't know the council meeting started. I thought
No,
Yeah.
So
we're
it's
we're
up
live.
there.
Yeah,
We're live.
here. We've got public in the room, just so you know. Casey's gonna say something confidential that we don't want.
I don't think he would.
Well, I didn't know whether he.
I think he is here.
I get it.
Yeah, Alex in the back corner.
Yeah.
The press. That's here, that's right. It could good. So close a little bit, so. The airflow stays good, but we can. See.
Yeah.
That one's, thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 1:06 p.m. and begin by acknowledging with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish, whose people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Leilofam, Bowen Island. And welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality of Monday, September 23rd, 2024. And thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. I'd like to introduce, as I always do, the other elected members of our council here today for folks that might be joining us in person or online for the first time. Starting on my far right, we have Councillor Alex Jurgensen. To his right is Councillor and Islands Trustee Sue Ellen Fast. To her left, is Councillor and Islands Trustee Judy Getty. On my far left is Councillor Tim Wake. To his right is Councillor Allison Morse. And joining us by video today is Councillor John Saunders. We are also joined by members of our professional staff team here today, including our corporate officer, Sophie Insignia, as well as online by our new Chief Administrative Officer, Kieran Dillon, as well as other members of our professional staff who may be presenting reports here this afternoon. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the question and answer period or the public comment section of the meeting, your voice and presence will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca and is streaming on our Bowen Island Municipality YouTube channel live right now, where it will be kept for posterity. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of the business of local government. We all love our community. We are all passionate about what happens here. I'd encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting and to direct comments during the public comment section, question and answer period of the meeting to myself. For those following online, either in person, those following along either in person or online or in the future, the full council package for this afternoon's meeting is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. With that, I will look to the corporate officer for the addition of any late items on this afternoon's agenda.
There are no late items today.
The late items today. With that, I will look for a motion that council approve the agenda for the September 23rd, 2024 meeting. Moved by Councillor Wake, seconded by Councillor Getty. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye, that carries unanimously. And next, moving on to public comments. How many public comments do we have? here
We
today?
have 2 today.
Okay, so each commenter will have the full 3 minutes available to them. You will hear a beep or a chime at 2 minutes and 45 seconds, giving you that kind of warning sound and the last push to really bring your point home and make it to council should you need it. And with that, I will look to the corporate officer to call up the first public commenter here this afternoon.
Alan Sogstad.
Sogstad, you want to join us up here at the front? No, feel free to get Sogs. Doesn't start until you begin speaking.
I don't need 3 minutes. I'm here because of our the 2095 Cape Drive, obviously, I think. And I just wanted you to know I'm here and here to answer any questions or clear up anything that you might need to know. But just thought I'd hang out with you for a couple hours. I don't know, any questions now? But, so, okay.
Thank you for being here and thank you for participating.
Next, Marie Atherton.
Mr. Atherton, feel free to join us up here at the front.
So he said, what the heck is he going to say? Just thought I'd come and I know that Tourism Bowen is doing a presentation today. Just because I've been involved in the tourism industry on this island since I arrived in 2000. And as part of the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Advisory Committee, where we advise council that yes, we should have a Economic Development Committee, which is now a Community Economic Development Committee. And also Tourism Bowen, which was sort of arranged because of the what we did at the EDC was identified 2 industries on the island, which are the main generators of economic growth, which is tourism and construction. And I don't know which one brings more money to the island, but who knows? Just one of the things that I wanted to bring up, one of the thank yous that I will never forget after starting up the chamber, starting up with continuing and growing the Chamber of Commerce, was we had developed a tourism program with the chamber because all the businesses were dying in 2000, 2001. So the next year, I had one of the main suppliers of visitors to the island thank me for what we were doing because he says, I was able to get out of my line of credit in June instead of late July, in the beginning of June instead of late July. That meant a lot to me. That's why we were doing it, was to build and keep the businesses in business on this island. And that's what Tourism Bowen is all about still today. Jody is going to be mentioned that there hasn't been an increase in the budget for to keep the info center alive until after Labor Day. There hasn't been an increase for at least 5 years in the funding that municipality gives it. It really has to increase. In those 5 years, my question is, how much is the budget for the municipality increased over those 5 years? And where do you expect the largest economic development industry in the island to live follow with the amount of money that you give us or give them to run that info center? Tourism really deserves the respect from the industry. Basically, I'd like to see an economic development officer on this island who would, and Jody and the board might disagree with me, but who would take on the tourism industry as part of the economic development and give the total recognition from council and the municipality and the public that tourism is, we started out as a tourism destination with the natives 100 years ago. And we were never a neighborhood. We're always a destination, and we continue to be. And they're doing a hell of a job on tourism management now. And I'd just like to see them get the recognition that they deserve for the work they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. Moving on to delegations, 3.1 Tourism Bowen Island regarding their annual update. Perhaps staff could help by giving another chair.
Thank you, Murray, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council, and a warm welcome to, I don't see him on the screen anymore, but CAO Dylan. I'm Liz Bankin, the Chair of Tourism Bowen Island, and this is Jody Lorenz, our Executive Director. We're here today to present our 2024 Visitor Service Report, which hopefully all of you have received a copy of. As stated in the report, we are requesting guidance on the future of the service agreement with BIM, because the agreement, as Marie said, it has not been revised since 2016, and the fee has not changed since 2019. And this agreement, unfortunately, is no longer viable for TBI to function. As Bowen and Metro Vancouver's population, as you know, grows, we need for ongoing improvement for visitor management. Of course, TBI is in the support of the businesses, but a lot has changed because of our growth and because the way people migrate and go to visit other places such as Bowen and across the world. We need to refocus on sustainability for our island and visitor management. So our recent strategy document, the Community-Based Responsible Visitation Plan, provides initiatives and actions to improve management. We want to work collaboratively with them and our stakeholders to improve and make these improvements so that TBI wants to advance the MRDT based on the 2020 plan that shares the revenues between tourism and affordable housing. I'm going to give this to Jody now.
That's my cue, I think.
Yeah.
So the second slide, so. As sort of Murray and Liz have already stated, Tourism Bowen Island developed out of the Community Economic Development Committee. We are a nonprofit organization, a community-based destination management marketing organization. We are member-based, so we are the centralizing body to manage visitors as well as support community economic development. We have operated, TBI was formed in 2015. We've operated the Visitor Center since 2016. And it's on behalf of the municipality, so it's a fee for service agreement. I just want to be very clear that that fee for service agreement is specifically to operate the brick and mortar of the Visitor Center. I know I've heard some people think it's marketing or something. It has nothing to do with marketing, and the funds should go towards that. Our counselors, as you can see in there, they're the front line management and community economic development people. They're Bowen ambassadors. They are trained to be Bowen knowledge experts. And so their goal is to engage as many people as possible to inform, educate, and guide responsible visits. Counselors are trained according to industry best practices, And we endeavored to mitigate issues before they happened, such as guiding people how to line up their car, locate washrooms, go to beaches that have outhouses. We're very, very deliberate in our guidance, and that's based on our years of experience doing this already. So for instance, we only direct people to beaches that have outhouses. Counselors are on the street. We're addressing issues, as we know, for instance, bus capacity, helping to redirect people trying to get on the bus if there's too many, or for instance, the recent tour bus with a reservation, which turned into a fairly significant issue, and that's thanks to having our staff there interacting with the public. The visitor center is operated based on the fee-for-service agreement that stipulates from the Victoria Day holiday weekend to Labor Day. So that's a total of 16 weeks or 110 days. And our statistics for 2024 were very similar to 2023. So staff assisted an estimated 8,529 parties or 23,620 individuals. It's estimated that 80% of the visitors to Bowen are from Metro Vancouver or BC. And we also, based on Vancouver Coast Mountains, there's a study recently or done a few years ago that estimates a minimum of 36% of visitors in the Sea to Sky are visiting friends and family. So as the population on Bowen grows, so too will visiting friends and family. Of note this year, international travel was back. We were doing a concerted effort to find where people were coming from, and we got them from Argentina to Wales and everywhere in between. And we also noted that there is a lot of increasing amount of climate-driven visitation. We had quite a few people coming from southern US, coming up to BC and Bowen, seeking cooler climate to vacation. So those are definitely some trends. So to the next slide, thank you. So it's one thing to operate the visitor center, but we need resources to do that. And so we spend quite a bit of time creating both print and digital. And once again, they are very specifically and purposely designed to support responsible visitation. So our website is the go-to resource for visitors. It has how to get here, how to get around, connecting with businesses. We use our social media to support community economic development, but also visitor education and emerging things like cougar safety, wildfire safety, how to line up your car. Our map that we've done for the past 2 years, once again, it's a mapping guide. There's doggy do's and don'ts. There's how to line up your car, fire safety. A lot of those resources are also put on our website. And when somebody contacts us, and we receive inquiries throughout the year, we have an email template where we share a lot of these links to the resources. So wherever touch point, we want to increase our touch points. And at every touch point, we try to really create responsible visitor value as we do that. So we spend a lot of time doing that, creating those resources. The fee-for-service agreement, of course, is just the staffing of the center and does not cover very little of the creation of those resources. The next slide. Included in the report was the analysis of, sorry, that one doesn't look very great either, but sorry, it's better in the report. It shows the what we received over since 2016. And just using up the minimum wage increase, not that we pay anybody minimum wage, is just showing that the value of the service agreement has depreciated over the years because of the inflation and the BC mandated minimum wage. So so as Liz was saying, it's during COVID, we had extra funding that allowed us to operate, but that funding obviously is now ended. And so like many nonprofits, we are in a position of how do we stay viable to go forward? So we are asking mayor and council guidance on the future of the service agreement. Of course, we understand that budgets will be coming in the future. And we hope that we can be invited to discuss that and also look at the service agreement. Next slide. So in addition to operating the visitor center, which is only one component of what Tourism Bowen does, is that we work regionally, locally with lots of stakeholders. We are involved, there's a lot of training and planning and strategizing on as you know, sustainability and climate comes to the forefront. You know, we're involved with the establishment of the Don't Love It to Death campaign. We're starting to work with the Ketsum House Sound, Destination BC, and all of their resources have been a huge support to us. That's in addition to our approximately 60 local members who, as Murray was suggesting, are some of the largest employers in the community. We're all residents here, and our members are both residents and employers and employees. TBI is a volunteer board. Our collective experience is at least 75 years, if not more, of tourism experience and extensive industry network, as we can say what we're doing here, but also other industry networks beyond there. Next slide.
Okay, a community-based responsible visitation plan for Bowen was created through research, interviews, surveys, and community workshops. This slide shows 65% of the respondents agreed that improving tourism planning and visitor management would help reduce negative impacts associated with tourism on Bowen. This plan is a thorough and practical framework to foster sustainable tourism and community well-being over the next 10 years. This is a living document, meaning this is a working plan that can be changed and adapted through the changes that are needed and happen through the growth of Bowen. Some residents have recently expressed frustrations and concern, requesting improvements to visitor management. TBI wants to work collaboratively with residents, BMI, and other stakeholders to obtain these goals and initiatives of this plan and implement the improvements. Two initiatives that we're working towards are a community engagement session in the fall and in establishing a resident advisory committee. However, limited funds and capacity are impacting TBI's ability to action into these initiatives.
Next slide. So what's coming across and what was stated in the report is that the grants that TBI normally receives are very specific. They go for projects, initiatives. The fee for service with BIM is very much so far just brick and mortar. Tourism Bowen Island does not have core funding. The most logical and the traditional core funding that supports an organization such as ours is the Municipal Regional District Tax Program. In 2020, I worked closely with Emma Chow on the business plan. At that time, they were working on the short-term vacation rental policy, and part of the policy was to implement the MRDT as well. And that proposal was to share the MRDT revenue between tourism and affordable housing. And we supported that. It's unfortunate that it didn't go through, but we are hoping and we're encouraging, we wish to collaborate with the municipality to to go back there and try to move that forward based on that business plan that would obviously have to be revised, but we recognize, yeah, we would like to work and move that forward.
So are there any questions for us about our news report, our service report, our strategic plan? The plan is always accessible through our website as well as council was sent the strategic plan. I think we made a presentation, what was it, 6 months ago?
It was in April.
April, 6 months ago.
Yep.
We made it, we presented the plan to council. And it's pithy. It's, you know, it has a lot of ideas. It has a lot of thought. And it already has language that is embedded in the conversations of our community already. So I would love to have further meetings with council or other, you know, involve other entities that either our community advisory meeting can move forward and maybe even get more movement and more participation to talk about these solutions and plans so we can reach our goals to help the island.
Thank you. I'll open it up to council for questions or comments for the delegation. Councilor Morse?
Did you manage to have the same number of paid staff hours, work hours this year as previous years?
In the report, I said that we were able to access, thankfully, a new integrated work integrated program, and we were able to actually hire somebody who met the requirements. It was a student from UVic, which was great because part of our struggle as a seasonal visitor center is doing it over again each year. Trying to hire is competitive, trying to get people on island. So it's very stressful. And, you know, the fee for service agreement is sort of it doesn't take in, this is one of the things we'd like to discuss, is it doesn't take in all the other work that's done the 257 days of the year, and that's grants and the development of the resources, the answering, you know, I mean, there's so much that goes on behind to be able to support the effective and efficient operation of the visitor center. And I want to thank Councillor Wake for coming in August there to actually see the visitor center in action. I think it's one thing for us to come here and but seeing is believing or whatever. So thank you for coming that day to seeing that.
So was I the only other one that came?
You stopped in, but you weren't actually there for Councillor Wake stayed, I think, for an hour and saw the whole process of the ferry coming in and the waves of the people and then the ongoing and yeah, so luckily it was very busy that time that you were there, and luckily I was there as well to meet you, and then I had my staff members. So it's always a juggling act. We know the correlation between if we have more staff, if we can open the kiosk, we interact with more people. We're able to engage. But if we only have one person at the visitor center, it does pretty well, but it doesn't connect with a lot of the flow that comes off the ferry. And our goal is to try to intercept as many people as possible, to give them the map, which is a good resource. Google is not always right. People end up in places they shouldn't, but we also try to have that interpersonal interaction to get the guidance. And so more staff, the more we can accomplish.
And also that position is filled through a grant through Canada Summer Grant.
Okay.
And what is happening with the temper of grants is that a lot of the grants are drying up. You know, we had COVID and then we had recovery. And so a lot of what you see in all the publications and the maps and signage, and even our report, our community engagement report strategic plan, that was through a grant. And so the grants are waning. And so we have to reinvent and possibly end up restructuring TBI. You know, and we have to review what the agreement is and what we can pay for. What can we afford?
Councilor Getty, followed by Councilor Wick.
So there's the 2023 Community-Based Responsible Visitation Plan for Bowen Island. It's 75 pages, it's pretty thick.
It is.
Have you gone through that and prioritized? I mean, there's a whole 50 recommendations. Have you been able to prioritize that and figure out ones that are more accessible and ones that need different resources and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are ongoing,
Yeah.
as well as, you know, goal number one at the very top is visitor management.
Mhm.
And I think that, yes, and underneath that, it's like, okay, let's do the what if. Let's say, okay, visitor management, you know, visitor management and the growth of the island is about cause and effect. And, you know, and we have to take that all into consideration. Is that, okay, so, for instance, case in point, we don't want, and we can't handle the amount of cars, and there's talk about priority boarding for our Bowen residents, okay, which is an issue. And so then there are the impetus to have more pedestrian visitation, and i.e. with the growth of the island, there's talk about the passenger ferry on Seymour Bay, okay? So that's a great idea, okay? So we have to think about the TransLink getting involved or a trolley. And then, so it's like, yeah, so it's, yeah, so we've got that, you know, we've got that, we have to talk about all the what ifs and look at all the facets.
So Judy, part of the plan is, one of the things is we're going to have a community engagement. We created this plan, it was based on community engagement, it was also based on research. It was also based on our years of experience here, so it was created, and yes, it is a 10-year strategy. What are the priorities? We can say what our priorities are, but that's why we're asking community, we're asking BIM, what can we action? So we can go in there and say, hey, this is our priorities. We already, as Liz is saying, we're doing quite a few of them, but our capacity is limited by funding, to be very blunt, I should say. Sure, we would love to action and move things forward, but we're just extremely limited.
And also to
Are
work
there
in collaboration.
between your organization and any of the existing committees on council?
I sit on the Community Economic Development Committee.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
So is this being discussed there or as well as with?
It was presented in April or May, but then of course we've had the breaks, summer breaks and stuff like that. So yes, we should probably move forward, and that was presented, but it hasn't. I think we have our next meeting in a couple of days or whatever.
Thank you.
Councilor Wick.
Thank you. And yes, that was quite a day, but I was down there, my timing was. I thought I would spend maybe half an hour there, and I couldn't tear myself away because it was like a three-ring circus, and you did a great job. And the two of you were very effective at tag teaming, and also, even though you were each talking to a group, if somebody else came walking by, you pull them in, and so that was very effective. I guess. I mean, one thing I keep thinking about is, why aren't we doing something on the ferry where we've got, more of a captive audience?
So we actually, when Tourism Bowen Island first started, that was our thing. We're gonna capture them on the ferry, and we did. We had a volunteer team that did work the ferries. I can't remember how many total hours was done, but the outcome of that and what people said was, they're busy looking at their view and they didn't want to talk to us. And that sort of experience too, people are kind of watching this year whales from the ferry, right? So they're excited, and what we have found is then they arrive on Bowen and they kind of get funneled off the ferry. And then at where we have our kiosk, if we are right at that intersection, all of a sudden people are like, oh, okay, what do we do now, kind of thing. So that's why that kiosk is really vital, both people coming and going to be right there. But also, we do capture quite a few people. They see the sign for the visitor center if we're there. So we did try that. We thought that was perfect, exactly what you were thinking. But that trial run wasn't effective. Should we try it again? Yeah. Would I love to have more volunteers? Yes.
I guess I'm thinking, rather than trying to get them captive and missing the one person to talk to the food. If you just had somebody going around saying, do you have all the information you need? And
That's what they did.
Yeah,
That's what they did. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they walked around with maps and
And people did.
people were, like I said, people were busy. You can't,
Don't bother me, I'm watching Wales.
yeah, I mean, this was when we first started, so 2016. I can't remember the exact details, but I know that was the conclusion at the end. Murray, I think you were one of the people that actually was on there as well, so.
And it's been highlighted too, that one of the primary experiences is the ferry ride.
Yeah, it's a visceral experience that people enjoy, that it's a complete experience that is separate than being on the island, that people enjoy. And that's what Jody's speaking to, is that they just want to be in that moment. And there's another idea, and there's, we're all a digital age and everyone has a phone, okay? And surely everyone is on their phone and knows how to navigate. But a lot of people were finding, there's a lot of information online and the same information from our website, people don't necessarily read. And yet we are in an age where we can restructure perhaps TBI and visitor center with QR codes, but there still is this crossover interfacing that people, maybe it's kind of a dream state when you come over here, that they sort of need the guidance because, it's maybe because of the way the island is structured with the buses and the centric cove area. People still need to be guided and talked to, which is like, it's kind of a cultural, it's our small town culture that we maintain. So, there is a kind of push for digital, but we can't force people to read. And we can't force people, we don't know what they're taking in.
So, I mean, we could go on like this.
Yeah.
Can I ask one quick question? Make one more comment. I mean, we've all been talking about all these ideas, so one thing I would absolutely agree with is we need to get together. Because we're already talking about MRPT for housing and I still haven't heard the real story about why it didn't go ahead last time. But I think we need to sit down and talk about that and work together on that. And if I guess back to the digital thing, we thought about just a whole island app. Like there would actually be an app that would have a map and show you where you are.
We thought about it. We don't have money for that. That's what the website is supposed to. I don't find, to me, apps are often a duplication of a website. So that's what we've got, just to make it better. But to Liz's point, it's not, some people don't even know that they want the interpersonal connection. I right now avoid going to the visitor center when the ferry's unloading, because I know if I just happen to be there, people are coming to that door and I ended up sometimes a half hour later because I'm talking to them. They want that. They want the local. Oh, what does the local suggest? What's this? And people, AI is going to come along and it's going to tell you stuff, and there's a role for AI coming along. But I think a lot of people are saying, as much as there's going to be AI, people are going to still want that personal service, interaction, that kind of thing. So it's what tools can you use? What do you have access to? You know, I'm always somebody, this is what we've got, how do we do it better, you know? That's how I approach problems or solutions. This is the reality. What do we want to achieve? How can we maybe get there? So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No, I think there's still more questions. So we have Councillor Saunders online.
Thanks. Just one quick thing. During your presentation, you made a brief comment about the push or the desire, at least for residents of shared loading. You said, and that's a problem. I'm curious to what you meant by that.
I'm reiterating a discussion within the residents. You know, it's there's, you know, people are stressed. And they're facing the, you know, the problems of over tourism, okay? And the amount of visitors we have on the island and how they navigate their day on and off island. And so I was just speaking to what I'm hearing from our community, you know, in terms of priority boarding. This is not TBI's jurisdiction. This is other DMOs that have to really restructure the rubric of BC ferries. And, you know, that's just, you know, there's some places that have priority boarding. There are some destinations that have visitor registration before they come. You know, so there's, you know, everyone is trying to figure out how to balance the visitors with the living on an island and the sustainability of being a resident.
Right. I appreciate that. And I agree with the points you just made. It sounded like, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. It sounded like you're saying, because that could be a problem for tourism if there was a shared loading for people that live here.
No, that's.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not, no, it wouldn't be a problem. It would be a new way of doing business.
Yeah,
You know?
okay, that's fine. Thank you.
There's some questions and comments for myself. The first is, I think, you know, we can absolutely refer the fee for service discussion to staff and have them bring back a recommendation as part of the 2025 budget process. You know, I think you know, I think one of the reasons why this discussion is so long and sometimes discussions on tourism are so spicy, particularly in the fall, is that we've just been through a heavy duty tourism season, and we hear that from residents. We hear that from everybody. It's certainly exacerbated by our, I want to say friends. I don't know if I call them friends, point over at BC Ferries and how they've been servicing the island. And I just want to presence and appreciate, you know, Tourism Bowen Island's role in managing the traffic down there. So, you know, I saw when the ferries were canceled for a half day in 2023, you know, Jody and your staff were walking the roads, you know, as the de facto customer service for BC Ferries, and then helping manage the flow. And, you know, when we get the waves of pedestrians and the waves of visitors this summer, it's, you know, Tourism Bowen's visitor center is really the first point of contact for many of the visitors coming to the island. So I just want to honor the importance and the value of that sort of work to the municipality, and looking how it can be sustainable in the future is certainly a conversation we can have. I do have a question about the core funding ask. So I do know that back in 2020, under a previous planner, conversations about the MRDT were brought up. We've seen some amendments, I think, since then to the purposes that can be that MRDT can be applied to, such as affordable housing. And we're in a different provincial regime right now. So we've seen post-pandemic, both the federal and the provincial government, and the British Columbia provincial government in particular, really put a focus on affordability and handing down housing legislation and you know, looking for us to target housing. So I'm curious, with a request for core funding, and we'll see MRDT come back to council, you know, at some point later this year, and looking for implementation at some point next year. But when I think of tourism management in a municipal context. So for us, as a municipality that deals with infrastructure, roads and taxation and things like that, it comes to, I think the lens that we would apply to it would be, infrastructure pieces like parking and, reconfiguration of Snug Cove to deal with some of the tourism dispersion and some of those like hardscaping pieces that I think are frustrating. The congestion in the Cove right now during the tourist season. So I'm curious with should core funding be, and this is separate from the fee for service discussion. So should core funding be applied to Tourism Bowen Island? What would that actually look like on the ground? So the ask is for core funding and for MRDT funding to assist with tourism management. Like, what would that actually look like? Where would those dollars be applied and how would it alleviate the tourism issue in the Cove right now?
So, I'll try to take a little bit of stab at that, but in case it's not common knowledge, it is listed in the report. The only undesignated funding that Tourism Bowen Island has is from our membership, which is approximately $10,000 a year. That's it. And that goes to insurance and all sorts of things. So at this stage, without funding or service agreements, very little that we can do. So, as I said, the MRDT was originally for tourism programs. And it makes sense with, yes, the priority affordable housing. There's lots of grants and funding to support that. So what was proposed in 2020 seemed like a reasonable thing, where it was supporting tourism and supporting affordable housing. We supported that. Unfortunately, it didn't go through. We can have a conversation about why I think that didn't go. What would that look like? It would look like trying to sustain the organization so that we can do some of the things that we're currently trying to do. Would we take on parking? That is a municipal, we don't have any ability to do that. That would be a municipal priority. So that wouldn't be something that we would say. Would we work collaboratively to support, how visitors disperse and making sure that they're being responsible, sustainable. People are leaving their cars at home, already. How do we get them around? So I can't say specifically.
Here's an example though. Here's an example. Jody wrote a grant to get an eco trip bus. So to help mitigate the amount of visitors coming using TransLink, that our island residents, this was a while ago, you want an eco bus that would kind of go around to the different neighborhoods of the island. What's happening now is that we have a lot of pedestrians that are coming over in groups, like groups of 20. So it's a group, they want to stay together. So they want to use the TransLink bus, as a tour bus to go around to various destinations and just see the island, right? And in that, our residents that need to, the kids, the seniors, the residents that need to use the bus to go to and from the Cove, to work, to home, they're not getting their spaces, right, on the TransLink. So and we didn't get the grant, so either there's a partnership with some sort of grant, funding from the province, and maybe there's some sort of bus or trolley that goes around that helps balance that particular problem. All the paperwork and the maps and all the information and the website, that all comes from grants. So the amount of the hours that would be able to sustain with the service agreement, we could perhaps hire somebody else as an ambassador to be capturing and working the very strong hours. Or here's another idea, creating some sort of checking calendar. We have an island that we have many weddings and parties with our families and friends. they are happening on the weekends, right? Those weekends during the summer days, it happened this summer, there were like 4 weddings, and then there was it a bike race? There was some sort of race. There were 4 weddings. There was a race that came in a bicycle
But it was-
run.
It was the Labor Day
run,
weekend.
The Labor Day
Saturday.
weekend, right? And so like maybe we create some sort of check-in calendar. I don't know, check-in where, the Muni, TDI, community, so we can balance out the events. And something like that kind of planning structure takes money to create that. And that would help a lot, is calendaring, like, so we as a community know what's going on. And on top of our DMOs reinventing, we know that,
Sorry,
okay,
what's a DMO?
I mean, a destination
Destination Management
management organization or BC Fair, we know like, okay, if this is completely the rubrics change, that particular weekend, we don't have, we do a cutoff of how many pedestrian passengers are allowed on the ferry per time, maybe there's a scheduling, that it's every other ferry and there's a cap on how many pedestrians are allowed on the ferry, so our residents can go to and fro. Our residents who are having parties and people coming here with cars can go to and fro. You know, there's that kind of planning, which planning takes money.
Okay.
Just one more point. I mean, the amount that the MRDT would bring in is not a significant amount of money too. So I think keep that in perspective as well.
I think so. You know, I think those comments just go to, you know, something Councillor Getty, you know, just to tag on to what Councillor Getty was speaking to in terms of prioritizing what's in the tourism strategy and being able to point to what municipal funding is actually going to. So, you know, for example, with the fee for service agreement, in my conversations with residents, it's really easy to point to that funding goes towards the staffing and the deployment of the visitor information center and being able to manage the visitors that come to the island. It's a very easy thing to point to. We, you know, if MRDT is going to be about $80,000 a year, if we invest $80,000 in a roads contract, it's easy to point to potholes and paving that gets done, right? And I think in terms of what we're seeing and the feedback that I've gotten from the community and residents, if there's core funding going to the tune of $60,000, $80,000 out the door, we need to be able to point at this is what it's accomplishing, right? I think the conversations with MRDT will be unfolding as staff takes them up. I'm sure staff will be in touch with you, but you know, but my ask is just that whatever that funding is applied to is that it's definable as to how it's going to mitigate the impact of tourism on the island. And to be clear, that's not entirely Tourism Bowen Island's purview. We were at the Union of BC Municipalities last week. We met with the ministry staff in tourism, arts and culture, as well as jobs and economic development. And we made the strong case that said our tax base cannot support the impacts of tourism that are coming to us from the Lower Mainland. They they acknowledge that they don't have capital funding for those programs, but it was something that they were going to take back and look at, because we are a bit of an exception to the rule here, and we need help in mitigating those effects. So there may be other funding or other resource streams coming down the line, which we would be hopeful about. Government moves slow, so it's certainly probably not by next summer, but it's we'll keep you informed on those as well. So,
Sorry, just one more thing. The MRDT application requires a 5-year business plan, so it's clearly stated what the funds would go to. So that's all.
Okay.
That's part of the process.
so thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Are there councillors that wish to remove items from the consent agenda today? Councillor Fast.
Yeah, I would like to pull 12.11. It's the last information item.
Any other councillors? Councillor Wake?
12.4.
Councillor Morse?
4.2.
Any other councillors wishing to pull items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will look to council for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Moved by Council Getty, seconded by Council Fast. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye, that carries unanimously, and we will deal with pulled items in numerical order. First one is 4.2, the water system specified areas advisory committee establishment bylaw number 258.
Where's Steph? Okay, I was hoping she would be here for this. I have absolutely no problem with the recommendation and I am going to, oh, you're here, good. I pulled 4.2. I have no problem with the recommendations. I'm going to move those, but I think we need to do the one final point, and that is to recognize the service that the various members of the advisory committees have put in and send them a letter thanking them for being involved on the advisory committees. So I would add that standard wording to the recommendation. Do you remember that off the top of your head?
To this recommendation of reading to the bylaws?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a second recommendation after that.
Yeah, I would suggest a second
Yeah,
recommendation.
so, but I don't remember the precise wording, so I'm hoping you do.
Yeah.
So I would move that the Water System Specified Areas Advisory Committee's establishment bylaw number 258, 2009, repeal bylaw number 665 be reconsidered and finally adopted. Alex is seconded.
Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. And that carries unanimously. And then the floor is still yours, Councillor Morse.
So the second motion would be, I move that a letter be sent to all the members of all the advisory committees, thanking them for their service.
And so we'll just, I'll have the corporate officer read that back just to confirm the wording.
Yeah, just for consistent wording with the other recommendations that we do, I'd suggest that council direct staff to send a thank you letter acknowledging the service of the local advisory committee members.
Thank you.
Okay, that's
Yeah, that's
amenable.
fine.
So I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Jorgensen.
Looking to make an amendment.
Okay, so we got a seconded then by
Happy to second as well.
Okay, Councillor Wake, and then over to Councillor Jorgensen for an amendment.
You mean amendment to my motion I just made?
Yes.
Yep, the floor is yours, Councillor Jorgensen.
Just simply instead of saying a letter, adjusting that to read letters. Meaning the difference not being one to each.
Oh, I thought it said a letter to the members.
Yes, but I was interpreting that as being one letter, like a form letter sent to
Oh,
all.
I was interpreting that as an individual letter to each.
Okay, never mind.
Why don't we say individual letters to the members?
So that council directs staff to send thank you letters acknowledging the service of the local advisory committee members.
To the individual letters.
Well, I think Alex is.
Yeah, it's Alex, sorry, Councillor Jorgensen still has the floor.
Yeah, okay, I was
I'm
trying to roll his amendment into my motion.
Councillor Jorgensen still has the
I'm
floor.
okay with that, with Councillor Morris's suggestion of, individual, just, placing that with individual thank you letters.
So a motion to insert the language, which would then have the motion read.
That council directs staff to send individual thank you letters acknowledging the service of the local advisory committee members.
Okay, so that's moved as an amendment. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Getty, any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. And so now we're back up to that motion as read as the main motion. Councillor Getty. Yes.
This isn't a 2-year, 3-year term on the committee. This is, for some people, many decades of volunteer work. And there's a long, long list of people that we're going to miss in terms of the people that have been working on it most recently. So I would like to amend the standard letter to include something about the many long years of service, valuable service.
Okay, so we have an amendment that is moved by Councillor Getty, which would then have the main motion read as.
That council directs staff to send individual thank you letters acknowledging the many long years of valuable service of the local advisory committee.
Seconded by Councillor Jorgensen. Any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Fast.
Just that I can think of a number of other committees that also have
volunteers who have served on it for decades. So, and like the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee, for example. So I don't have a problem with it. I just don't want to make it too much different from the other ones. Because lots of people volunteer and that's part of why it's on the top of our agendas and it's such an important part of our community. But if people want to put that in for this one, it's fine. I'd like to leave it to staff personally.
Thank you. Any further discussion just on the amendment? Councilor Morrison.
Just for clarification, when anybody resigns from a committee or their term ends, they are always sent a thank you letter. So it's not that we haven't acknowledged.
I know.
that. I'm just clarifying for the general public.
Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, I will call the question on the amendment. Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That carries unanimously. We're back up to the main motion, which is still as just read. Any discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Continuing our journey down Pool's consent agenda items, we are on 12.4 from Councillor Wake, which is Thomas Gibson regarding Bowen Island concerns dated August 14th, 2024. Over to you, Councillor Wake.
Yes, we received this letter from Mr. Gibson. I've had a number of email exchanges with him on this same topic. I've tried to correct a lot of his misinterpretation of what's going on. That's been unsuccessful. So what I'm going to do is pass this along to Birch and have them respond to Mr. Gibson's concerns directly. And I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Okay, so a motion to refer 12.4 to Birch. Moved by Councillor Wake. Seconded by Councillor Getty. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that carries unanimously. And now down to 12.11, Andrew Thompson regarding Crown Lands dated September 14th, 2024.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to speak to this because I don't know that it belongs on our agenda and I would be uncomfortable. I'll be voting against receiving this letter. This is I found it less than respectful in the week leading up to the National Day of Reconciliation. Accusations, aspersions. I heard you use the word respectful at the beginning of the meeting, sir, and I think I don't want our Bowen meetings to become a platform for the disrespect that's showed in this letter. Land acknowledgements described as ugly and misguided attempts. And I don't know what the word woke means when it's all in caps like that, but wording about First Nations leaders alleging things that I'm not even going to read. And so I just didn't want to receive it and have it posted on our website, giving it any kind of credibility or a place for people to point to that Bowen Island municipality received our letter. This gentleman is from Kelowna. And I understand it may be pretty tricky for staff to make these distinctions, but maybe there's some policy we can have about letters that come from other communities that don't relate to anything specific about Bowen Island in this letter. So I'll be voting against receiving this letter.
Okay. And I think my comments are somewhat consistent with yours, Councillor Fast. Yeah, I don't think there's anything, just for the sake of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, there's nothing obscene in this letter. However, I think it's important to acknowledge Bowen Island's commitment to reconciliation, both in our upcoming official community plan redraft, our congruence with the efforts that are coming from the province and the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, as well as our unique position within the Islands Trust and the Howe Sound Biosphere that does everything it can to respect the rights of Indigenous peoples, as well as the process of reconciliation. My comments on the nature of being politically woke would be my definition of woke is not pejorative. It just indicates social consciousness as well as the deployment of compassion in our relationships with the stakeholders that are important to us. And I would disagree with the content of the letter. That said, we will need a motion to receive, and whether council chooses to adopt that motion or
What about if nobody chooses to make that motion?
nobody could choose to make that motion, and it would just fall off this agenda. Councilor Getty.
I think if I ever had an opportunity to meet and have a discussion with this writer, I don't know where I would start in terms of, trying to sort out factual and versus biased information in terms of, the first opening line, politicians do not have a mandate to subsidize crown lands. I mean, I have no idea where that's coming from and whether that's even legally possible and it's not based in any reality of anything that's happening on Bowen. So, it's every sentence is full of an argument that is both circular and difficult to have. So I agree with the sentiments and the opinions of yourself and council, and I don't want to be the one that's making it, even though I'm hoping that the motion would fail. I don't want to be the one to make it. So,
Councillor Saunders, followed by Councillor Morse.
Thanks. Kind of torn on this because I think what Councillor Fast said was true in the sense that it's a bit disrespectful and maybe there's some random statements in there. And I suspect this letter probably went to pretty much every municipality in the province in a mass mail out. So that doesn't attract me any. Having said that, I don't like censoring anything, even stuff I vehemently disagree with or vehemently agree with. I think everybody should get 2 cents. And having said that, it's from Kelowna and it has no impact on us. And we've received stuff from outside our jurisdiction previously. So, we don't have a hard and fast rule about that. Maybe that's something we want to take up in the future about how we want to receive things. I'm kind of torn what to do here. I'm not fussy about the tone of the letter more than anything else. And I'm not fussy about the fact that it's from outside of our jurisdiction, but I like the fact that people are allowed to say what they want in our country, even if we disagree with them. And so I'm going to have to hear out the rest of this discussion before I decide what I want to do with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Fast, you did pull the item, so I will leave it to you to make a motion of disposition on this. Or not.
I'm not going to move this thing. I just wanted to say, I wonder if this could be looked at as a form of discrimination because of the third paragraph, which well, I'm not going to read it. I think it's discrimination. I don't think that should be acceptable or tolerated in our agendas or minutes.
My recommendation is I think this has taken up enough oxygen and giving it more just keeps the fire going so we can safely move on unless there's a councillor who wishes to make a motion on this item. Seeing none, the letter is not received and we are going to move on. 7.1 under bylaws, 2095 Cape Zone rezoning land use amendment bylaw number 66, 2024. We have our community planner, Mr. Falcon, with us today.
Anybody know what that sort of low rumbling noises we can hear?
There's a generator here, my power goes out. Must be construction.
You said it or?
Those are wondering, but we could.
Sounds like construction.
It's
But,
not the low rumblings of an earthquake, that was all.
No,
Having
it's the low rumblings of the community center.
been through ones and they do sound like that.
Rollins are finishing off.
Mayor and council?
Yeah.
Not quite fully sure. So this report is to provide details on rezoning application for 2095 Cape Drive for consideration of first reading. So this application was submitted to permit the existing Island Discovery Learning Community, or IDLC, school to continue operations indefinitely without the need of a temporary use permit. So this will be done through a zone variation of the RR1 zone. It was also recognized that it would be necessary to create a new designation under the OCP as well. This application was introduced to council at the June 24th, 2024 regular meeting. It was then referred to the Advisory Planning Commission. The APC met on July 3rd, 2024 and supported the rezoning application while providing two comments. One, that the impact of access through DC Road and otherwise be considered. And two, that a rural/institutional land use designation under the OCP be applied. So just so in terms of the rezoning, so it's just going to be creating an RR1G zone variation, which will add the school use. Not much more to explain there. With the OCP amendment, there were two aspects that we had to amend. One is creating that new rural/institutional land use designation, and the other was just adding reference within the Cape Roger Curtis section of the OCP, just to reference this educational institution. So what that text was in both those aspects, so the new rural institutional section would be described as providing for lots that allow for rural institutional uses in functional locations that are accessible to the public while preserving the unique amenities and environment of the island. And then for the addition to the Cape Roger Curtis section, state that the municipality may consider approving institutional uses within the Cape Roger Curtis site to uphold access to education for locals. Transportation access routes must also be a consideration in approving new institutional uses. Regarding public notification, a public hearing will be held after first reading of the bylaw. Public will be notified through mail-out notices to neighbors, also advertisements online and in the undercurrent. And then a public information hearing is also to be held by the applicant at a later time. As required for an amendment of this kind, the Islands Trust policy checklist has been completed and will be submitted to the Islands Trust after first reading. So staff's recommendation is that council gives first reading for bylaws numbers 666 and 667, that those bylaws and Island Trust policy statement are referred to the Islands Trust, and that staff returns with the results of those referrals.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Jurgensen. Any further discussion on this item? Councillor Getty?
The question about the DC Road, that was raised by the other committee. Is that a viable option in terms of, other than bicycles, getting access to this lot?
So there is other access through,
Well, white sails on.
Right.
Yeah, that's the main one. And DC is in very rough shape, so I
Right.
should assume that not many cars are gonna go zooming through that neighborhood, but is that something that we could recommend or add? That it be bicycle use only and not automobiles for the parents and the,
I definitely think we could, yeah. I'll note that, like, I know. Yeah, it's not like that there's been any actual complaints brought up regarding this, but just, I know that kind of sort of precedence wise or so, it's been an issue to be directing any amount of public access through a private road. It's that, not just the condition of DC Road, it's the issues that, it's that private aspect. Yeah, I haven't talked with Daniel, I haven't quite had an issue come up with this, and I sort of discussed with him, like, what is the solution there? And yeah, at this stage, don't really have an easy answer. I mean, normally our way of doing things is always through conditions on a permit. And yeah, we're just not, we don't want to issue conditions where we have no way of enforcing them, and we're not really clear on how we would enforce this at the moment.
Councillor Wake, followed by Councillor Fast.
Isn't there a gate on DC Road? Like, you can't actually get through there with a car.
Maybe Alan, so I didn't know, I can answer this. I wasn't aware of the gate, but.
There is a gate on DC. In the 4 years, I guess we've been doing it, no one has ever driven down DC to drop their kids off there. They could, because the lot goes right onto DC, one portion of the lot. But it's a rough road and nobody's ever, and then it's a bit of a, it would be much easier for parents to drive down White Sails and up. The other way. I don't think, I've never heard once of a car going DC. But a lot of the kids take the bus and they get off on White Sails and they walk up DC and go through the trail to the school. Which is quite handy and a nice way to start the day.
Thank you. Council Fest.
I actually think we should be silent on this because there's something that's working. I believe it's a emergency route. If we try to put policy onto it, it might stop. And I just think we should let the alternative transportation things that are happening happen unless there's a problem that comes up. Otherwise, it seems to be working. I don't think we should force the issue.
What's worse?
It is I mean, the gate is more there to stop people from the nice paved bit from Cape Roger Curtis trying to go down DC, because anybody turning up DC from White Sails is going to take one look at this and say, unless I'm going to one of those houses, why am I doing this? And I think it's entirely within the purview of the school to, if parents start doing that, and as you say, I wouldn't want to drive my car up there, they should be cautioned and not, dealing with parents that this is not an acceptable route to use. And the school bus brings them right to the school, right? Have you got a bus?
No, they use the public.
They use the public, yeah.
Seeing no further questions or discussion, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Yes, Megan? Moving us along to 7.2, Public Wharf Services Bylaw and related amendments to fees and charges bylaw and bylaw notice enforcement bylaw. We have Doug Woods, our bylaw service supervisor. A lot of the word bylaw sentence.
Try to squeeze in a few more.
Over to you, Mr. Woods.
Yeah, I guess the short version is this all started an effort to address mortgage rates and how they hadn't changed since 2009, I believe, the last time there was any kind of change. And that kind of snowballed into some other changes that we wanted to make. And let's have a new wharf bylaw entirely. And that just necessitated, due to how we're doing things administratively now, that necessitated the changes, the other amendments associated with this. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions. I think that's. Yeah. Hey, Allison.
Councilor Morse.
Okay, first of all, I think all we should be doing is giving this first reading because it does impact people that are using the wharf and the public, and we want to be I thought we wanted to be seen as open, transparent, and consultative. The second is we haven't been given the list of research. So we don't know how this compares to fees charged by Gibson's, for example. And the third is that we haven't, I have absolutely no idea what the changes are being made to the bylaw. There's no track changes version. It just says, some minor changes, and I didn't have the time to sit down with my husband and me read one bylaw to him and mark the changes that weren't there on the other one. So, I'm okay with giving it first reading because it gets it out there to the public and lets them know we're serious about this. But without seeing a lot more information, it's not, from my perspective, going to go, we shouldn't give it second or third reading. We need the schedule of the research and we need to know what changes were made. So hopefully I understand that there might be a list of changes that were made that could be provided as a public document. I was hoping that would all be on table today, but it's not.
Further discussion? Questions, debate? Councillor Jurgensen, followed by Councillor Getty.
I would just like to say support Councillor Morris's position on this.
Thank you. Councillor Getty, followed by Councillor Fast.
Thank you. In the materials, you mentioned the birthing priorities, in particular for Mount Garden. Is that described anywhere? I know that was
Yeah.
controversial.
That's in our public work assignment, reserved more assignment policy that was adopted December.
Yeah.
It's also.
Is that on the website or? Okay.
Counselor Fast.
I'm wondering if we can ask the bylaw officer to describe the main changes that were made.
Sure, I mean, mea culpa as far as not providing, sufficient information there. I was trying to be as brief as possible with the report. So I didn't provide, the detailed information. I do certainly have that information and I'm happy to provide it to you guys. But the main changes were obviously to do with the mortgage fees. And in line with how we're doing things now administratively, we decided rather than having the mortgage fees and the fines amounts all baked into the bylaw itself, which is what they were, they would be now referenced as, you can find these in the fees and charges bylaw, you can find these in the bylaw enforcement bylaw. And those were the two major sort of structural changes there. And then the main thing, of course, was the fee increases for public wharves. And then like Allison mentioned there, I do have a full list of the actual, every single little change, 90% of it remained the same. There were some language changes that were suggested to us during the legal review process. So we adopted a lot of that sort of syntax stuff, vocabulary things. Some things needed to be removed, references to the crane on the wharf. Well, there hasn't been a crane there for many years, that kind of stuff. So sort of housekeeping stuff. But I do have a full list of all of that, and I'm happy to provide it to you guys. But really, those were the main changes here, were removal of the schedules. The fine amounts, by the way, have not changed. They have remained the same. Somebody had asked me that. But they're now part of the bylaw, notice enforcement bylaw. And yeah.
Thank you.
Further discussion or comments? Counselor Fast.
I think we spent a lot of time on this back in December, and we asked staff to create that policy about the wharf moorage. And I think we've done a lot of work. Staff has done the work we've asked them for. And so I'd like to move Public Works, that Bowen Island Municipality Public Wharf Services Bylaw number 663, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time. That Bowen Island Municipality Fees and Charges Bylaw number 651, 2024, amendment, Public Wharf Services Bylaw number 664, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time. That Bowen Island Municipality Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw number 196, 2008 amendment, Public Wharf Services Bylaw number 668, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Fast, seconded by Counselor Saunders.
I'd like to
Counselor
move an amendment to that motion.
Morrison. Okay,
I would move that in each of the first and third line, sections, that the words second and third be removed. So it would read a first time, and then second and third be removed in the next section, and second and third be removed in the second section, third section.
we have an amendment moved by Counselor Morse.
I was hoping Councillor Jurgensen might second it, since he was.
Seconded by Counselor Jurgensen. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
Nay.
So that carries with Counselor Getty, Counselor Fast, and Counselor Saunders in opposition. You're now back to the main motion.
I abstain.
You cannot abstain, so you would have voted in favor then. okay, I'm gonna just take that vote again. So all in favor on the amendment, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
Nay.
So that carries with Councillor Saunders and Councillor Fast in opposition. Back to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Woods.
So will those two pieces of information be sent around to everybody and included in the next agenda? Or maybe added as on table items to this agenda for public information?
So what we'll do is I'll keep it in mind, and I believe the corporate officer will keep it in mind for when we do agenda planning for when it comes back for second and third reading.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to section 11, new business. So we have an update to council on Metro Vancouver business as well as TransLink business. I think I'd also like to take some time within those updates and talk a little bit about the outcomes of UBCM. 11.1, the mayor's committee meeting, not a ton to report. The agendas are public agenda is available online. Maybe I'll look to somebody who attended the Council of Councils as I did not to speak to any outcomes of that. I believe Councillor Fast. Councillor Fast, you had your hand up first. Feel free to go ahead.
Okay, I want to talk about sewage. No, I just, I think the meeting was really interesting. Councillor Wick and I went there. They had 3 topics on the agenda, but we actually only got to the first one, which was the North Shore Sewage Treatment Plant. There were lots of questions, and I have the report if anybody would like to see the some images of the deficiencies. And there were lots of questions for staff, and I came away thinking we have a very professional staff over there, and it's just going to cost more. I wanted to say I heard about Metro Vancouver Regional District asking the province for a governance review. And I'm not sure what all that's about. Maybe you can tell us more. And I was just pleased about the sewage treatment plants on the North Shore and at Iona will leave the Salish Sea so much cleaner. And I think that's really valuable from our membership in the Islands Trust perspective, the preserve and protect, and just from wildlife and healthy ecosystems in a changing climate kind of direction. Really good direction, and I'll be pleased to take that news to the Islands Trust trustees as well. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I would second the comment. Staff were very professional, and I went in there thinking, wow, this is a mess. And actually they've handled it, I think, very professional. And it sounds like they can be a way forward. It's going to be a lot more money, but it's going to be well managed.
Thank you. And just a couple of comments from my end. So to my knowledge, there hasn't been a governance review requested from the province. So there is a performance review that's being done at the behest of the board in regards to the North Shore wastewater treatment plant project. There's nothing upcoming on the agenda regarding an ask for the province about a governance review to Metro Vancouver. And then also just to note for, residents who are following along as to the sewer drama as it relates to Bowen Island, Metro Vancouver. We're saying that Bowen Island does not pay into the sewer system of Metro Vancouver. So we're not a part of the sewage and drainage district. We only have to deal with the tricky funding of our own sewer issues here on Bowen Island. Regarding, yes, Councillor Getty.
So the chair of the regional district of Nanaimo sent a letter last spring to the province for a governance review on behalf of the regional districts. And that may be what Metro has signed into, and that has morphed into a study on financial reconfiguration for regional districts and municipalities, a working group with UBCM. So I've reached out to, because we've got trust meetings next week in Nanaimo, I've reached out to Vanessa Craig, I believe her name is, who's the chair of the regional district for Nanaimo to find out about that governance study that they're doing and trying to see if we can get, if I can get involved as the chair of the governance committee for trust. So I'm not sure what I haven't been able to figure out what stage they're at and how much work they've done, but
Right.
there is a working group at UBCM and
Thank you.
there's, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if Metro was involved in that.
It has not come to the board. And it's not part of the intergovernmental strategy as approved by the board for Metro Vancouver. So it sounds like it's Nanaimo initiated.
I don't want.
Update regarding TransLink. So I suppose TransLink's big news was the press conference at UBCM last week, where the goal is to make public transit in the Metro Vancouver region a priority during the election, given the extreme funding challenges that TransLink will face after 2025, when the current investment plan runs out and they go over what is termed the fiscal cliff and are left with a $600 million a year operational funding gap. So that'll be something to pay attention to now that we are into election season. Just a few notes on UBCM for folks that might be watching. So UBCM, for those who don't know, is the Union of BC Municipalities. And the big conference for UBCM was held this last week. And I would only describe it to anybody that hasn't been as Muni-palooza, where it is a week of all of the municipality or all of the municipal elected officials, or as many of them as want to partake, come together this year in Vancouver, along with ministers and ministry staff and non-governmental organizations to partake in a program of education with a variety of sessions and panels and town halls, but also meetings with various ministries, ministers, their staffs, and government organizations. So we had a number of meetings as a council at UBCM with ministries that we requested. We didn't get all of our meeting requests filled, but we got many of them. It began with a staff meeting with the Ministry of Transportation, Arts, Culture, and Sport, as well as some staff from the Jobs and Economic Development Ministry attended as well, where the main focus of that meeting was really to make the case that Bowen needs help in managing its tourism on the island, particularly coming out of this last summer, as it was exacerbated by BC Ferries. As we know, our infrastructure in the Cove, whether it's sewer, roads, parking, the ability to manage congestion dispersion, isn't something that we can really fund, or we're having difficulties funding with our small population tax base of 4,200. So given the pressures that we're experiencing on the mainland, we really put that into their court and asked for help. We did meet with the Minister of Jobs and Economic Development, and our main ask there continues to be inclusion into the Islands Coastal Economic Trust, which we're not a part of. So virtually all of the other islands, including non-islands like Gibsons and Sechelt, are part of the Islands Coastal Economic Trust. We get excluded as a part of being a part of Metro Vancouver under the idea that somehow we're deriving grant benefit from Metro Vancouver, which I would argue just isn't true. We had our MLA, Jordan Sturdy, attend that meeting as well, and he made a strong case for our inclusion into the ICE-T program. And we also spoke to them, the difficulties in this identity crisis that I think the province and the federal government see Bowen Island as, where I think we feel to some degree that we're rural. They don't see us that way, and it makes it very difficult for us as a part of Metro Vancouver, but still having a rural character to secure the grant funding that we need to build out the projects that are really crucial for us. We did meet with the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. The hot topic, as most folks can imagine there, was ferries. And our press, both with the Minister of Transportation as well as BC Ferries, was having all parties acknowledge that they have a role to play in the ferry service here on the island. The ministry said in not so many words that they believe that Bowen Island is the worst ferry service in the system. And while they attempted to maintain that BC Ferries is an independent organization and separate from them, I think our council pressed them well on the fact that the Ministry of Transportation, as it holds the performance contract, as it has significant influence over BC Ferries and the associated organizations, that the Ministry of Transportation has a significant role to play in helping untangle the challenges that are not just seen on Bowen, but system-wide. We did meet with both the Ministry of Municipal Affairs staff as well as the minister herself, Minister Ann Kang. And in those meetings, there were a continuation of what we're talking about around infrastructure. So we were able to provide updates to the minister and her staff around our infrastructure deficit that we're facing, which is currently pegged in $90+ million, and the difficulty in being able to fund the renewal of that infrastructure with our current tax base. We discussed the challenges that we have in being able to secure stable infrastructure funding and how Bowen Island, as a part of Metro Vancouver, sees the very large majority, 90%+ of its Canada Community Building Fund federal money going to TransLink. And we provided updates to her about our asset management program. So they were very interested to hear our plans, as well as also had interest in perhaps making the legislative amendments that would see us included in the Islands Coastal Economic Trust. The last meeting that we had was at the request of BC Ferries. So BC Ferries reached out to me based on some of the correspondence that has gone on and some of the struggles that we've seen this summer. I did bring our Bowen Island Transportation Advisory Committee representatives, Councillor Getty and Councillor Wake, to that meeting. How would I characterize that meeting? Possibly the spiciest meeting that we had throughout the whole week. We met with their Vice President of Public Affairs, their Director of External Relations, and their Director of Communications. What felt noticeably absent, and this was voiced by myself and a couple of other folks at that meeting, is that we did not see anybody from planning or operations or strategy at that meeting. The case was made clear that we're not interested in any more planning fixes. The Bowen Islanders are not interested in another engagement event where they are asked, what do they think? We believe that our asks and our requests to BC Ferries are fairly straightforward at this point. In the absence of any capital funding and capacity investment, then our ask is that they look at operational solutions such as priority loading. We've asked that they take responsibility for ferry marshalling in the Cove and for the infrastructure that runs off the ramp, that we are interested in having a conversation about their ownership of operations in Snug Cove up the ferry lines. And the last request was really that as a what they classify a minor route on the system, that they commit to fixing it. So the meeting closed with, in my own words, saying that if BC Ferries cannot commit and take accountability for fixing the schedule issues on what they term a minor route, how is that supposed to give confidence to any user riding the ferry and the rest of the system? We've left it with them. We understand that there's going to be more meetings. However, I think they understand that we're tired of engagement, and Bowen Islanders want to see action and a clear plan in moving forward by next summer. And that was my take on UBCM. I will look to any councillors that perhaps want to add any context or color to what they got into the week. Councillor Fast.
Thank you. That was a great description. I'm just going to add one other one, which was the meeting about watershed protection.
Oh, right.
Water
Yes.
security. And so just we had a good meeting, the parliamentary secretary of that Walrus, Water, Land and Natural Resource Stewardship. And we'd asked her for some information about this water sustainability planning strategy and whether there was grant money. Yes, the grant money is open. Here's another suggestion. Here's another suggestion, which was great. I wanted to mention this is all kinds of local governments, not only munis, but as regional districts, Indigenous communities, more and more of them are joining, and Islands Trust was there as well. So I just, this is everything from big cities like Vancouver to tiny places like Zabalos. And anyway, so we're all in there together, and Islands Trust being there, we did have an informal get together. So trustees and councillors who were attending the event and Claire Frater from Islands Trust and Kern Dillon from Bowen staff could also just meet.
And Julia.
And Julia Mobbs, the acting CAO, thank you, for Islands Trust, could at least put names to faces and talk a little bit about some highs and lows in the last little bit, like just to get to know each other. So we talked, the end of that was all about collaboration and looking for opportunities to work together. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other post-UBCM thoughts from council members?
I got some of my Islands Trust report.
Sure. Let's move on to the Islands Trust report then.
So in addition to the BIM municipal meetings, Sue Ellen and I and another trustee from Salt Spring were also present. And so we met, sorry?
And Kate Louise.
All right, sorry, Regional District for
Sunshine Coast.
Sunshine Coast. So we got together with some of the delegations that the Trust Council had, the executive committee had set up. So that was a really interesting merging of all sorts of interests. And the governance committee had a very, very good meeting with some of the municipal staff. And I didn't get to all of the meetings in terms of housing, and they wanted to do small housing and building code restrictions on gray water and a number of other issues. But it was a very, very busy week. The get together that we were talking about was outside in the hallway after a very good reception. And it was remarkable because we were sitting in a circle. It was like a campfire, and a whole lot of people that were walking by on their way out of the thing were commenting that it looked like Islands Trust gathering. So that went very well. And anyway, it was a very productive and interesting week full of a whole lot of meetings. It is a marathon of sorts. So we also had extra meetings with the CAO hiring committee for the Islands Trust. So with that moved ahead as well. So it's been busy. We earned our stripes last week.
Great. Councillor Fast.
And just moving on from there, Judy and I will be heading off bright and early tomorrow morning, I gather, to Nanaimo for Trust Council. So 3 days, 2.5 days over there. So we'll be back Thursday night. The agenda is posted online. It's all live streamed and everything like these meetings are. So if you go to islandstrust.bc.ca, you can find the agenda and all the links and everything.
Part of that discussion is going to be a new policy statement, and hopefully that is going to get passed and come back for reference to us after first reading. So it's a very interesting document. It's about 6 months of discussion.
Just a question about one of the pieces on the Islands Trust agenda that's coming up is I noticed that the trust is asking for a request for decision from the province and the lieutenant governor that would appear to request the province make significant changes or take responsibility for making significant changes to the Islands Trust structure and governance and act generally. And I noted in the interim corporate officer's report that reference was made to the Bowen Island protocol agreement that the trust has, where prior to making those sorts of requests or making legislative changes, that Bowen Island needs to be consulted, and that it also, without being in the interior of the trust, but the briefing did make note that part of the intent of the letter was to force the trust governance to be an election issue. And I'm just curious, as the Bowen Islands trustees, if you have any insight into that, how the appropriate process should be stewarded, and how to avoid making governance a political hot potato that may have the potential to backfire on the trust and our interests in it generally. Councillor Fast?
Well, I'll lead off. Just that part of being at UBCM for me this time, there are a broad range of opinions about what Islands Trust should be and going into the future and whether it should exist at all and whether logging should be allowed in nature reserves even among trustees. So we're a diverse bunch of elected officials from the various islands. And I came away from UBCM thinking that this kind of review approach, for one thing, I don't know if the election had even been called when they were putting that together. Maybe Judy will know, but I don't think the timing is good. I think I've seen with the new Declaration Act, could it trigger a First Nation title discussion or change as in Haida Gwaii? Is this something our communities want or are ready for yet? I was also really interested in the resolution sections of the Union of BC Municipalities where communities vote with their voting cards about whether we should, as a group, as a convention, forward recommendation to the province, and then the province responds. So this is communities getting together to ask for changes. For example, a policing act review went forward and was voted on in 2020. And that was where a whole bunch of communities all decided that, yes, that was needed. And they all held up the voting card. And the province actually took some action. I didn't follow up all the different steps, but I'm going, I wonder what maybe we should be coming to UBCM with a resolution asking other communities to support, like the regional districts. And the second reality check for me was going it alone might not be the best option. If we do ask for a review, for example, there was a resolution about NR 66, which was about asking for another way to pay for services in properties that are in agricultural land reserve, because it's very difficult to keep up with the rising costs for those property owners who are trying to farm and grow food for the province-wide. So I was going, man, you just substitute the words Islands Trust and it would specify a narrow ask for the province. And that has worked for Islands Trust in the past. Anyway, I won't go on except to say, I don't think it's a good timing, and I've had several reality checks, and I will be speaking to this at the Trust Council, that I don't think it's a good time and I would be supporting it. Plus, Bowen Island needs to comment. Go ahead, Judy.
So this was a resolution that first came up at the end of the last term of the previous council. And they sent a letter off almost immediately to the minister. They got a letter back saying, you know, you haven't used all the tools that are in your toolbox, and there's an election coming up, so we should wait and see what the new trustees think. So it's been 2 years in, and there are lots and lots of problems in various parts of the trust, and it's a very interesting combination of opinions in that group, strongly held. So the motion came back up after our June quarterly meeting, when we had a presentation by Adam Olson saying, this is hot, this is something, you should be doing this, and he made a very strong recommendation. So that got picked up and it got referred to the governance committee. Came to the last governance committee meeting in July. We decided that we couldn't discuss it as a whole group because that would be a quorum issue and having a public discussion and all the rest of it. So a working group was set up. And that, as I understand it, turned into one trustee writing the proposal. The rest of us talking about it. It did not go to the trust council as a recommendation, or sorry, as a unanimous vote. It went to council for discussion, trying to open it up. And there have been meetings with municipal council staff specifically about that proposal. And their advice was very strong and very cautious, both in terms of the change of government that's potentially out there, that if you give them a wide open agenda or possibility, then you have to be careful in terms of what you wish for. And the last review 37 years ago was when the provincial government decided that they would abolish the Irish Trust. That had a great reaction, and then they did a study across the province. So it's going to be a very difficult debate at council, and one of the points that is, I'm glad you've raised this. This will be very helpful in the discussion in terms of both ourselves and the Conservancy. And we've just been through a long process of sending things out to First Nations that are involved in decision making, to try and involve them very heavily in the policy decisions. So this plowing ahead with this now, without making referrals to all the agencies that are very interested in the existence of the trust, whether it should go ahead now. So there's, the writ has been dropped. There are no politicians in Victoria. We have to figure out who the new the government is going to be, and who the minister is going to be, and we basically at this point, we don't have staff support, and they told us that this is an amateurish platform. So unless we've got specific asks, and we haven't spent a lot of time developing that, people have lots of feelings and lots of demands, and I hope it doesn't go anywhere, but we'll see.
Okay. That's helpful information. I would hope that you would carry my request from the chair here as the mayor, that the Islands Trust honor its protocol agreement, and understand that for such a request that could reshape the governance within the trust, which includes us, needs to be taken into account. That the writ has already dropped. So if the desire is to make it a provincial election issue, the time to build out a communications plan and a public relations campaign to make that happen has passed. And that at this point, the postponement of this letter until the wider population of the islands, and in particular Bowen Island is the only municipality with the islands, can be taken in and considered. We're happy to have those conversations. We would just like to be included, and I would like to be able to bring it back to this full council for discussion, as we know that within our own communities there's conversations about we would like to interact with the Islands Trust and how we would see service moving forward into the future. Okay, Councilor Morse.
There's an addendum to the agenda. And it's interpretation of Islands Trust Act, Section 3, Islands Trust Object Briefing.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's going to be a discussion from 8:30 to 10:30 on, because looking at the agenda page, it says 5 p.m. Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. and then underneath it says 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. So
it's a half day at some point.
So we don't, so is it on the 3-day schedule? I didn't.
Yes, there's a half day at some point. I believe it's Tuesday afternoon. Can't remember, but that's another whole other lengthy discussion.
Yeah. And for information, the last time the protocol agreement was amended, there was significant discussion between both parties to amend it, because we have to do that, so. I really wish they do their agendas like the way we do ours, so you can look at the agenda and then click on the link.
We've
Working on
been
it.
pushing on it.
Working on it.
We're spoiled.
Yeah.
As far as the agenda.
Yeah.
We will take that and file that as a compliment to our corporate services department. Okay. Great. So let's move on then. We are at question period. So section 13. Are there any folks online or in person here in the throngs of visitors that we have, and the sizable press gallery that includes Globe and Mail?
Can I
and
just say that the press
CTV
gallery
and-
is 100% full?
Seeing none, we will move on to adjournment. Councillor Getty has her hand up. Councillor Saunders just winked at me. I'll take that as the second. Any further discussions? All in favor, raise your hand, say